Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining today, and welcome to Heli Market Trends Live, hosted by Aero Asset. I'm William Sturm. I'm a partner and co-founder and also VP of Sales, and I'm delighted to welcome you all today's roundtable dedicated to the global VIP market with a special focus on fixed wing and yachting aviation. The VIP aviation sector continues to evolve, driven by changing client expectations, new technology, and the blending of luxury travel with operational precision. Across helicopter and fixed-wing platforms, we're seeing shifts in demand, design innovation, and how clients integrate aviation into their lifestyles. Today, we'll explore these trends in two dedicated panels, focusing on the fixed-wing market environment and VIP yachting operations for helicopters, each offering distinct insights into market direction, aircraft selection, client behavior, and future opportunities. So to guide us through this high net worth world, we're joined by two very, very respected moderators. Ford van Weise of Sankaty Jet Capital LLC. He's an industry veteran with deep experience in aircraft financing. Ford will be moderating our fixed wing panel. We're also very, very honored to be joined by Whyte, co-founder of Corporate Jet, investor, helicopter investor, and super yacht investor. He spent more than 2 decades covering and connecting the global business aviation community. Al will lead our VIP yachting panel. So let's start with the fixed wing discussion, where we'll explore how the VIP aircraft market is performing and what's ahead for 2025 and beyond.
Great. Well, thank you, Will. And I'm excited to be here. Will's done a great job over the past few years of really creating a great community here. So thank you, Will, for asking me to moderate this panel.
We're thrilled to have you, Ford. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Take it away.
I'm excited to, have Memo Montemayor for AMC Jet join us, as well as Chris Ellis, one of the managing partners at AVPRO, and also Greg Oswald, a partner at SOLJETS. These three individuals have decades, many, many decades of experience in the business aviation brokerage community and have true insights into the market. And with that, and it doesn't look like Chris has quite yet joined us, so hopefully he'll join us here at some point. We'll take it off, and I'm going to start with Memo, and I'm going to ask both Greg and Memo to comment on the current market and to understand, really sort of to help us understand what's going on right now. And where do you think it's going to, over the next 12 months, what's going to happen? So Memo, what are your thoughts? And then we'll go to Greg.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me, Aero Asset, for putting this together. Ford, very nice to meet you. And thank you, Greg, for sharing this with us as well. Market is, it's hot right now. Even before, 100% depreciation just came to light not too long ago. A lot of private individuals are just wanting to, take a dive into, depreciating airplanes, right? Just before that, the market was hot in certain segments. We focus on the large cabin aircraft, and I can particularly speak about the G650 market. We've done about 7 transactions on G650s and got 2 more in the next few weeks. That market has incremented by 30%. There's no supply, and I think for the next the next 12 months, the G650, even 6 months, the G650 is still going to be a very strong contender. Again, people are realizing that that's a great platform. The OEMs are backlogged on delivering 700s, 600s. So I think the 650 is in particular a really tight market. So it's a very competitive market.
Let me follow up on your comment about the 650 market, because for years that was the bellwether market in business aviation, because it was considered one of the best long-range airplanes out there. It was in great demand, still is in great demand. But with the uptick in G700 deliveries down the road, and Gulfstream's already announced they're going to increase production on it and start delivering a lot more. Do you think that's going to have an impact on the G650 values and in the large cabin market more broadly, or not?
Not really. People are realizing that you can buy a G650 for $30 million less than either a 700 or well, a 700, right? But you know, people are realizing that that aircraft does a lot of the things that the 700 does, right? I mean, you know, for 45 million bucks, people can travel anywhere around the world, you know, with the G650. And I think, you know, and you know, people are realizing, look, am I going to spend 85 million bucks, $79 million when I could spend $45 million on a G650 that does, you know, a lot of my missions? I think I want to stick with the G650, and I think that's what's happening.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard anybody. Essentially, what you're saying is the G650 is the large cabin value buy, but it seems to be that what you're saying, and I tend to agree with you on that one. So let's go to Greg. Greg, what are your thoughts about the current market and what's going to, you know, where it's going to head, and sort of why don't you give people a little background in what part of the markets you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm completely on the opposite end of the market compared to where Memo plays, right? So we primarily focus on single pilot light jets, right? Phenom 300s, CJ3 pluses, CJ4s, things, PC12s, things like that. And it's very interesting. We're seeing the exact same trends as the large cabin market. And it's really a simple equation, right? We don't have the supply of airplanes in the pre-owned market to keep up with the demand. And specifically, you know, I'll use the Phenom 300 like, you know, Memo used the G650. There are not enough airplanes out there for people that want them. And I don't see the next year or even 18 months changing, right? I think that airplane prices are going to remain stable for that period of time. And the primary driver behind that is, you know, if you want to order a new airplane right now, you know, you're over almost 2.5 years out. And you know, we're retraining our clients' thought process about new airplanes, and it's kind of interesting, right? You know, these buyers that want an airplane a new airplane every 3 to 4 years, or sometimes 5 years. You know, when they're taking delivery of their new airplane, they have to order the next one, right? And we haven't seen that in the last, you know, decade, right? So it's been a very interesting process, you know, educating clients on, if you want a new one, you have to get in line now.
And do you think that's going to deter buyers, or do they just go buy a different model, or do they just decide they're going to wait?
Well, yes, the answer is yes, it deters buyers, but the issue is there's nowhere else for them to go, right? You can either pay the premiums to get into the used game and have an airplane now, which most buyers are doing, or you can say, I'm going to wait. You know, if you want to order a new airplane, you can wait the time period to get the new airplane and come up with secondary lift, whether that's charter or fractional or whatever it may be. So, you know, it's not just segmented in one class of airplane. I think this is an industry problem, right? From, you know, let's go all the way down to small 172s, all the way up to the G700 Memo discussed, right? There's just not enough inventory right now.
Now, of the percentage of buyers that are, you know, trying to buy these aircraft, unavailable aircraft, really, and the Phenom 300, from what I hear, is just one of the most in-demand aircraft out there, period, by both, you know, corporates, you know, individuals, as well as fleet buyers. When you take a look at that, how much a percentage of this market are, you know, high net worth individuals versus corporates?
That's a great question, and I would say it leans more to the corporate buyer that is still running a company, right? So, you know, a large organization that may be family owned or getting ready to be taken out by private equity. I would say that light jet market is there, but also we're seeing a major uptick, right, with Memo's clients, you know, adding secondary lift to their flight departments with smaller airplanes right now.
Right. Memo,
Yep.
You know, what we saw during the pandemic is we saw this huge influx, at least, you know, in my position where my previous employer, huge uptick of ultra high net worth individuals jumping into the market for obvious reasons. Have you seen these ultra high net worth buyers decide that, hey, it's not for me anymore, it was fine during the pandemic, but, you know, this is too much, I want to get out? Or have they pretty much been sticky and stayed here?
No, they've been staying. I mean, I've always said it. Once you get into an airplane, you're never going back. Especially, traveling today keeps getting more difficult. I think that's another thing that our market keeps increasing because, I mean, sadly, flying through the airlines, it's becoming tougher and tougher. Give you an idea, I've had this year. I had two clients that always flew commercial. They had the money to buy a 550, and about 3 months ago, I get a call saying, "All right, Memo, I am done. Let's go buy an airplane." And I'm, just put me on an airplane tomorrow. So I don't think, I think once you're in that aircraft and that private aviation world, you're not going to go back.
And Greg, have you seen the same question to you? Have you seen the ultra high net worth buyers, exit or stay?
No, I'm seeing everybody once they've touched a private airplane, they're staying. What we are seeing change is the small flight department somewhat getting gobbled up by large management companies, right? That can supply pilots, maintenance, that always have the lift. So we are seeing a change there, but I'm not seeing anybody leave the industry and say, I'm real excited to go fly on the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me just sort of, you reminded me of a topic that was raised during the JetNet IQ conference in Washington about 6 weeks ago. When WingX presented data, they said corporate flight department flying was down about 25% over the last quarter, and that at the same time, what they call branded charter and fractional was up around 30%. And the inference there was that corporates were transitioning their flight departments or getting rid of them, and going to this branded charter / fractional. So Memo, have you heard of this, or is this a trend you're seeing or not, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, we've the fractional space has done a great job in providing clients or potential buyers that don't want to have or own an entire aircraft on their own. There's guys that just, hey, I want to get into the private aviation world, but I don't want to own an airplane. I don't want to fly more than 200 hours a year. So I mean, the fractional world is also growing, but we're also getting a lot of those fractional ownership guys that it's not cheap to fly fractional. Once you add up the numbers, people are realizing, oh my God, I mean, by what I'm paying an hour, a month, and what I'm buying this fraction, I think I'm ready to buy my own airplane. Plus, I get to depreciate it, right? So, it's a little bit of both. The fractional ownership program is, it's growing. Everybody and their mother is trying to get into the fractional ownership program inside of our business. But there is a lot of customers that we've gotten from NetJets, from FlexJet, that they just want to start, owning their own airplanes.
And Greg, do you have any further thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't think any of our clients, are jumping up and down saying, I'm excited to go to fractional. I think it's more the issues with hiring pilots, with getting maintenance, with the power in numbers, right? It's hard to argue that these large management companies are not giving a great service compared to the one-man band flight department. So that's what I see on the smaller side. When people are exiting owning their own airplane, they're not getting out of private aviation. They're just moving the burden to somebody else, for pilots, maintenance, hangar, insurance, all of those other things that they don't want to deal with anymore.
And I've also heard from a few corporate folks that it's also a PR issue too, that sometimes they don't want to be seen owning an aircraft. It's much easier to bury a fractional or charter in the financial statements because it's really just going to appear under operating expenses. And it's, for some of these companies, it's not a significant number, but just owning an aircraft stands out. That's something I've heard. And also, frankly, some environmental concerns or being targeted by some of the environmentalists these days too is another, particularly in Europe.
Yes.
Memo, you just mentioned something.
and supplement the lift.
Go ahead.
Supplement the lift. If somebody owns an airplane, they want to have a fraction on the side just in case their aircraft is down for maintenance. So there's also that side of the business is growing as well, where a lot of people have one airplane and they need supplemental. They don't want to go charter. They just want to own a fraction.
And my prior employer had 3 aircraft and had several fractional shares as well, to provide lift for when one of the aircraft was down or when all the senior management wanted to go to different places on the same day. So no question, it's a great tool. There's no question. Memo, you just mentioned something which is sort of been, some people think, a huge driver of aircraft sales, which is the continuation or restoration of bonus depreciation. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think it is a major driver? And if so, when somebody goes to sell an aircraft, and all of a sudden, because they double depreciated it, they've got their negative basis on the aircraft. So you buy an aircraft for $10 million, and then you sell it for $5 million. Okay, so you bought it for $10 million, but your basis is now minus $10 million because you depreciated $20 million of it. You go to sell it for $5 million, and you got a huge tax bill because it's 10 minus 5. You got a $5 million gain you're paying tax on there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is it driving the market? And when people buy an aircraft, do they really consider what's going to happen at the back end of the deal or not?
They do. I mean, most of our, the people that we've dealt with and our clients, they're they have money because they're financial savvy. They have a great team behind them, in terms of, in on their financial world. But they do know that. I mean, I'm dealing right now with a client that owns a G280. We're selling it. We selling it basically what he bought it 4 or 5 years ago. But he right then and there, we got a lot of guys that said, Memo, immediately, let's try to buy another aircraft so I don't take that hit. But again, some guys are very financially, savvy, and they have their ducks in a row. But I mean, again, I've always said it, and I think I've learned that, to these people, to this high net worth individuals, this is like a car to them, right? So it's it's really not going to make a difference. They just want they want to get their airplane, and if they know what's coming due, and they know, I mean, they're ready to buy the next aircraft. So it's they already have it all figured out from what I've seen.
And Greg, are you seeing bonus depreciation being a big driver or not?
Yeah, it is absolutely a driver, and it's a great tool that we have in our industry to use to sell airplanes. I'm not seeing on my side of the market, the mass rush to buy and have to have a deal before the end of the year, and that's what we saw in the past is there was a sunset, right, where it went from 80% to 60% to 40%. So there was a mass rush to take depreciation before the end of the year. I'm not seeing that right now because, frankly, we're going to have it, at least in my opinion, through the rest of this administration, right? So another 3 years. So we don't have the rush. And then to follow up on Memo's question or his answer, we're in the same place. Very educated, very financially astute buyers and sellers, right? They're either planning on continuing to own an airplane for a long term into the future, right? Or maybe forever in some cases, or they're selling airplanes in down years rather than up years.
Right. One of the things when I was talking to clients at my previous employer, we'd often get the client would say, listen, I'm going to buy an airplane. I'm going to fly it, 150, 200 hours a year, and I want to charter it the rest of the time, and I'll help defray costs. And this is the classic, I used to get these calls all the time. And so the question I have for the two of you are, when you get a client like that comes in the door, can they actually get the charter revenue? And does it actually cover some of the costs that they thought it was going to cover? Memo?
Yeah, I mean, there's if you're with the right firm and with the right company to help you, I've always said it. When people say, "Hey, give me your plane and we're going to make you money," I mean, run away. You're going to offset cost. Instead of the aircraft costing you $1 million a year, it's going to cost you $800,000, right? But again, we're talking about a company, like you said, that they're taking care. Pilots are taken care of. They're getting white glove service. Plane is ready whenever they need to take off, right? And I mean, in reality, a lot of guys are doing it, and we're seeing it right now with a lot of companies. They're just putting in a 135 for tax purposes too, right? So it helps them on their financial side, but in reality, I mean, you do offset costs. Right now, the charter market, it is bananas. Everybody and their mother are chartering airplanes, so I wouldn't. Again, if you're with the right company, you will offset costs. Not a lot, but you will.
And Greg?
Yeah, exact same thing. And Memo said it perfectly, right? It's offsetting cost. It's not making money, right? There's a reason why I don't have 10 feet on 300s in charter, and that's what my retirement package is. There's no way to make money off of it. It's a way to offset cost. And as these program providers, and I'm specifically talking about engine program providers for these airplanes, as they keep increasing their minimums, right? We're seeing more flight departments put their airplanes on charter just to meet their minimums, because if your minimum yearly program is 400 hours a year, right, and they're only flying 200 hours a year, they need to find the lift, or they need to find the need for the other 200 hours on the airplane.
Well, if they pay the 400 hours, is the airplane's essentially worth more money because they paid into that fund more? Is that math correct or not?
Yeah, correct. But if you have a minimum program contribution amount of 400 hours per year, right, but you're only flying the airplane 200 hours a year, you're paying an additional 200 hours of cost that you're not using.
But you're getting it back when you sell the airplane, theoretically, because it's increasing the value of the engine maintenance program.
It's not decreasing the value of the airplane. I'm not sure if it's increasing the retail value, but it's holding steady. It's not decreasing.
Well, you've got a good point, because we have seen the engine maintenance programs increase their minimums and also increase their hourly rates fairly dramatically too.
Yes.
And the question, Memo, is, has that had an impact on buyers or existing owners getting frustrated? I'm curious what the impact of that is.
I mean, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I don't think it's, you've had the impact of, the buyers just, realizing that that's something that they have to go through. But I mean, again, I have not seen this in this past year. People are just, they've made up their mind, I'm going to buy a plane and I'm going to put it on a charter certificate. I'm going to buy a plane and I'm just going to have, Part 91 manage it. So, I mean, it's really not affecting that I've seen.
Right. Okay. Well, let's switch gears, guys. Oh, there's Mr. Ellis. So we don't have a lot of time left, Chris.
Right, guys.
Welcome. We've got the esteemed, Chris Ellis with us. So I'm just curious, I've asked these guys sort of what their thoughts are on the market. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and we're going to conclude. We've got 6 minutes left, but I'd love to conclude, or we can go over a little tiny bit, but I'd love to, conclude with what you guys think where we're headed in the next 5 years. But Chris, what do you see?
Sorry for late. I couldn't get off an emergency call. Anyway, the market, as I'm sure we've heard, it is crazy strong right now. But after 3.5 decades, we've seen these cycles before, right? We're super busy right now with bonus depreciation, strong economy, a lot of cash flow, reasons to take tax advantage, long backlogs in aircraft OEMs, so limited used supply. Look, the fleets have grown considerably over the last 20 years. It used to be these manufacturers used to put 36 units out a year. Now they're putting 50, 60 units out per model. There's a lot more supply. That's why you see the gain in real estate, MROs, and just, growing and growing in terms of where we're going to put these airplanes, how are we going to work on them, et cetera. The fleets have gotten huge. I think I think at least short term, this year is crazy strong. I think next year is going to continue to be strong. I don't see any layup. We got a lot of buyers for next year looking to do stuff first, second quarter, even as far as third and fourth quarter. Next 5 years, Ford, I mean, look, we're late in the cycle, as more than anybody, for some kind of normality. I guess it's been so long, maybe this is the new normal, right? We used to have 5-year cycles with a 15-20% correction in the markets. There is none of that anymore. I'm not talking airplane markets, I'm talking financial markets, right? Our last correction in the financial markets was 2008, which caused, a significant drop in the aircraft markets, a significant drop quickly. Look, it's going to take something like that to cause a real financial issue in the aircraft markets, right? Usage is strong. It's over a lot more people, 25 years ago you used to own or, charter. Now there's 50 shades of gray in the middle where, a lot of people are using and digesting aviation in 25-hour blocks or block charter or whatever. Every time you turn around, there's another no-name fractional use-based regional aircraft operator popping up. But it's clearly a lot more mainstream than it was 20 some years ago. Ford, I don't know if it's going to, I see it being anything but robust future for the next 5 years. I don't see any, we might have a short-term blip with some financial issue, but that's about it.
Greg, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, crystal ball about the future.
I haven't been in it as long as Chris, right? I've been selling airplanes about 20 years, right? So I started in 2008 and basically got punched in the face for 4 or 5 years. And it probably should have been smart enough to get out at that point in time, but I stuck with it. So, man, it's been a heck of a ride, over the last, 10, 15 years. Like Chris said, there just hasn't been anything that's slowed the momentum down in the financial economy, which then transfers over to airplanes. So, like I said earlier, I don't see anything in the next 18 to 24 months that's going to slow airplanes, and especially the pre-owned market transactions down, because there's just goes back to supply and demand. There's more demand than we have as far as, the supply that can handle it.
So, Memo, I'm going to take one of Greg's comments and sort of extrapolate on it for you. What happens if the OEMs start increasing production meaningfully? Do you think that's going to have an impact on the market? And let's just say the financial markets stay fairly, steady at this point. What kind of impact would that have? That's a question I get from a lot of people.
Well, I mean, let's just say, you're not backlogged 2 years. Let's just say, next year there's availability of, 30 G700s or G650s, right? I honestly do not believe that is definitely going to decrease a little bit of our pre-owned market, but it's, again, it is, to me, it's very crazy how companies like FlexJet, NetJets, there is buyers for each segment of each market, right? You have, FlexJet, NetJets, they're overloaded with needs. You got the brand new aircraft owners that are needed, they're needing, brand new airplanes. And then you got your pre-owned market. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to slow it down. I mean, I don't want to say ever, but for, like Chris said, for the next 3 years or next 5 years, I don't think that's going to make a big difference. And again, we go back to how trouble traveling is today. Traveling keeps getting worse and worse. And, again, I don't think that's going to change a ton.
For the OEMs it takes 2 to 3 years to ramp up production. I mean, you got to get engines, they got to build plane. I mean, it's a long process, and they're not going to do it if they don't think the demand's there. I mean,
and I don't think they repeat the same mistakes they made, before the financial crisis, because that was extraordinarily expensive, particularly for RDA. Yeah, and they learned their lesson.
It's hard to fix. I mean,
and Chris, we were talking about the G650 market, so I talked a little bit about that. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. Look, the 650's out of production. I mean, it clearly doesn't feel like it's an old airplane to people, but it is out of production. So, I mean, massive demand because it's a flagship airplane. But in terms of supply, the market's crazy right now. But we've seen this frothiness. It's especially this time of year. It's just really, the stars are aligned and it's just off the charts. Right.
So one quick last question, each of you, very, very quick answer. So let's start with Memo. We'll go to Greg and then Chris. That frothiness, is it as frothy as it was before the financial crisis? Are we set up for, if something happens in the financial markets, for a big pain or not? Yes or no? Memo?
No.
And Greg?
I don't think so.
Chris?
No. I mean, the only reason I hesitate because I don't know what kind of hiccup could happen for that when the financial crisis came out left field, right? I mean, for most people, and for the pandemic, it was a V recovery. I didn't see it. It was a V. I mean, we bottomed out and went straight up. I mean, not many people saw the V recovery in the pandemic, which was another, shock to the system, big time.
Great.
So it recovered quickly. The markets recovered quickly.
Great, guys. With that, with you all saying essentially, we're not in the same place as we were before, which is music to, I think, everybody's ears. I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator, and we're going to go to the next segment. But I thank you for your comments. Chris, thank you for joining. Your
Thank you for
comments
I
were very,
apologize
very
for being
helpful.
late.
Thank you.
Memo,
Greg, as
Greg,
always,
yeah.
very bright comments. And Memo, I'd love to hear, you were great too, also, particularly with your insights on the 650 market. So, gentlemen, thank you. And I'm going to turn it back to everybody else.
Thank you, Ford. Really appreciate you for you joining today. That was a great segment. Always great to have you.
Well, thank you, and best of luck. And you've got 3 great brokers there for anybody who wants to, look at an airplane. Those guys can certainly help you out very well. So thank you.
Cheers, pal. See you soon.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks again to our panelists, to Chris, to Memo, and to Greg for those great insights. It's clear that demand, buyer expectations, and deal structures continue to evolve in fascinating waves in the fixed wing market. So now let's turn to the VIP yachting aviation segment of our markets, where design, safety, and lifestyle come together in one of the most specialized sectors in the helicopter industry. I'm very pleased to introduce Al Whyte, co-founder of Corporate Jet Investor, Heli Investor, and Super Yacht Investor. Al, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Good to see you again.
You too.
Well, great. Al, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Great. Thanks very much. Well, welcome. You've heard about jets. Let's get on to the far more interesting helicopter market. I've got 3 experts joining me today who really know this market inside out. Although I think a few of them also know quite a lot about jets. We've got Dan Vanderpleyn coming to us from the Côte d'Azur. Dan's joined. Dan,
hi,
how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. I'm very good. What about you?
Great, thank you. Do you want to take us through how you ended up getting involved in yachts and helicopters?
Yes, wealth of 20 years of operating helicopters and ending up into this VIP market in almost, let's say, yacht-based niche, because today we can still speak for a niche operation. We are not so much outside operator within this market. And with that in mind, we are today operating 2 helicopters on yachts, which are one of the first of the year, first ever happened. We are operating both helicopters at the same time on a super yacht. And we will explore all the avenues and the specificities of this niche later today.
Brilliant. We've also got Simon Mitchell from Starspeed. Starspeed needs no introduction. Simon, you're the biggest operator in Europe, aren't you? VIP.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always slightly reticent to go around that particular one because we just try and service the clients. But yeah, and I think to answer that same question, we serve the ultra high net worth market, and the ultra high net worth market moved to yachts, and so we followed them. So it was really the customer that took us there, and so we've been there for about 20. Actually, we started operating off yachts probably 25 years ago. So yeah, so since that time we've managed 20 different projects in 65 different countries. So yeah, so it's a little bit, yeah.
And
so,
how did you personally end up on the luxury side? Because before that you were in the Navy, you worked offshore, and as a police pilot, didn't you?
Yes, I think it was. So those of you who know the Starspeed history may remember a gentleman called David Voy, who's in many ways has set up. So in 2005, one of the long-serving clients had bought a Dauphin, and at that time Starspeed didn't have Dauphin pilots, and I joined as a result, really on the Dauphin side, and that I would have taken it from there, 20 years ago now. So there we go. Time flies.
And we're also delighted to have Mark Monsma, Senior Vice President Transportation and Senior Pilot for Landry's. Mark, how are you?
Hi, doing great.
You could have also been on the last session, couldn't you? Because you also run a large fixed wing business.
That's right.
And Mark, how did you end up in the VVIP market?
Oh, I've been in it my whole life. I think I started back in 1988, 89. And I wound up becoming a helicopter pilot as well as a fixed wing pilot in early '94. And we started, operating off of yachts. I would say probably 2009 when he built his first Westport 164. We operated an A-Star off a very small shaft on the back of that yacht. But I do want to back up to the fixed wing segment real quick. I'm not quite as rosy as those guys. You have to remember they're all brokers. They're very optimistic. I think you're looking at three big problems. Number one, the FBOs are they're going for the jugular. It's insane what they're charging. I mean, we flew to the inauguration, $20,000. We wanted to leave and come back, another $20,000. One time Teterboro's getting crazily insane with their fees. If you don't give them a day notice, they want to charge you an extra $10,000. And the pilots are making stupid money. And then the third problem I see is just access to check rides and the FAA. It's horrible. And it's going to force some of the smaller operators out where you don't. I mean, we're on a charter certificate with 30 different jets, and I can't get a 299 ride because my guy can't get up with the FAA. So I don't think it's quite. I understand people are buying jets and so forth and so on, but I think we have to be very careful if we just let these costs go amok. At what point in time are the owners like, I'm either going to go to a different airport or we're going to scale back and just go with one of the programs, So I see costs, even training, right? $52,000 to go to 4-day recurrent on a G650 or 70 on a G700. It's crazy.
You've also missed out parts. I was talking to an operator last week at CGI Miami who's been told he's got to wait 18 months for a windshield. Or you talk about engine leasing. If your aircraft goes in, whether you can actually get a loaner engine. There's so many issues.
I think a smart broker is going to direct his client to buy a helicopter or jet that he can actually support, right? Not to knock our British friends here, but the Hawker, for example, I had a friend was down for 14 months just trying to get a new axle made, So I think if you want to do your clients justice, and the same thing's true on the helicopter side. How do you maintain these out of production? So I see the operational issues more than just everything being as roses,
I also I like the thing about FBO fees is, can you really call it an event fee? I think the only day you're not paying an event fee is now leap year, is on February the 29th. I think someone was telling me. But let's try and be rosy. Dan, we've just had a really upbeat panel on business jets. Is the VIP offshore yacht market, helicopter yacht market, booming as well?
Not really sure if we can say booming so far, but we had suffered some, I would say, COVID pandemic and all this kind of crisis within EU. But for sure, this market is very emerging again and is very promising nowadays. On the other side, which making also promising this market, we start to have more wealth people who can afford, I would say, decent size of the yacht to welcome a helicopter, which really weighing in the balance, where before it was more like for another kind of category of people, I would say. But now we could see that even shipyard are getting way more interested in building helicopter facilities. And this is why this is definitely a growing market, for sure. For the next 10 years, as minimum, that's going to be an emerging market, for sure.
Great. We'll come back to the shipyards. I think that's a great point. Simon, what's your view? Are you seeing a boom or just strong?
No, it's steady. It's steady. There's a steady stream of new yachts coming out. There's a steady stream of owners looking for helicopter support. It's not boom, but it's steady. Yeah.
Mark?
Well, I can only speak to our operation. We have a 384 for Lursen coming out with 2 pads on it. And we have a 252 fed ship. I guess I should be talking meters, right? 70 meter. That's for sale. And we're happy to sell the helicopter with it.
To be fair, I think when you start saying Lursen and fedship, you know it's big. See, when you go to a yard, well, Mark, years ago, when your principal first got involved in yachting, is it fair to say that the heli deck was a sort of an afterthought often?
So I think you're right. Even on this new yacht, I didn't even know we were building a new yacht, right? And they bring you in after the fact, and that should be integral to the whole plan of the boat. When you start talking about, the structure, are you going to have blade storage? Are you going to have storage for maintenance? They don't think about it. The problem I see with helicopters and yachting is a lot of the captains just look at that helicopter like it's one of the tenders, and they really should consult with aviation and say, hey guys, what are your needs? What are your crew needs? Because that's always a battle too, right? Do they even put enough rooms on the boat to support the staff? So there's kind of this little tug of war, which is unfortunate. In terms of our Lursen, it came with the pad up front that I think they all do for safety reasons or for whatnot. It goes up to 16,000 pounds. And then we added the pad on the back because the boss likes everybody looking at his helicopter on the back. So that's kind of how that, yeah.
Simon, would you agree? Do you think
Mark is making a very, very good point there. I think, there's a couple of issues we always find in the helicopter market. One is that people tend to treat it as just another aircraft. It's not. It's a different type of aviation. It's not just a different machine. It's a different aviation. And I think the sort of common errors we find, and we have to come in and sort of try and repair the damage, if you like, is typically what we'd have, and it's no offense to the fixturing guys here, Mark, no offense, but then the standard thing we find is the ultra high net worth owner generally operates the fixturing before they operate the helicopter. So their normal thing is to turn to their 650 captain and say, can you please go and spec this helicopter for us? And of course they write it's not the and the G-Fit 650 captain, goes and specs the helicopter as a fixturing, and it's not the right. It's way too late, and you find this helicopter coming off the production line being specified as a fixturing, and you just go, well, actually, you haven't got this, you haven't got that, and you haven't thought about this, and it's the completely wrong spec. But it is fairly normal for us to get involved so late. The typical thing is lovely. It's always lovely to be approached by a new client that says, will you look at operating this helicopter for me? And I'll say, yes, absolutely. And I say, when's it arriving? They say it's coming off the production line next week. And you just go, what? Okay. So how much catch up have I got to do now? And it's the same with the boat. The boat is spec'd without consideration of how I'm going to maintain this aircraft, how I'm going to park this aircraft, all those things. So you bring the helicopter guys in lot earlier. The general mistake is to bring in the helicopter specialist too late, and then you're having to repair the mistakes that Mark has highlighted. Have you thought about accommodation? Have you all these things? So my biggest tip is, please, if you're thinking about helicopters, bring the helicopter specialist in early. It's a lot cheaper to change lines on a drawing than bits of metal on the ship and what have you. Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I fully agree with Simon and Mark, because having this case quite often, I would say, helicopter operations are totally different. And when it comes to shipyard as well, I will not repeat what they just mentioned, but I can also highlight another point where most of the time there is no communication between the aviation team and the shipyard, which create a lot of frustration when it becomes operational for the crew. In terms of maintenance facility, even a hangar. We talk about hangar. I think some yachts, if the client decide to go overseas or crossing, hangar should be present on the yacht, and that should be decided at early stage of the project. If the project are made in the same time of the helicopter, this is a very, very common problem. But I would say I can highlight that some shipyards are getting a lot of effort to put that. For Lawson, for example, they have an aviation department, and they are really keen for this now.
If I may, Alasdair, can I just pick up on a very good point from Dan? And I think this is looking ahead. The hangar issue is really important, because when the typical, it's not quite the M25. For the non-UK guys, the M25, the London orbital thing. But there's almost a route whereby you kind of go, late spring you're in the Greek islands, midsummer you're off, Sardinia, Sicily. Late summer you're off, Nice, Saint-Tropez, and then you move to the Caribbean for late October. And there's always the issue of, right, how am I going to move the aircraft? And it used to be the question of people used to try and strap them down on the back of the boat with film wrapping and what have you, shrink wrapping, and it's really not the way to look up, after aircraft. And of course, it massively limits the boat in terms of its move. But the other thing to bring out that Dan makes a really good point about is the OEMs are looking at the parking limits of aircraft on yachts a lot more carefully. So certainly Airbus are bringing in quite distinct limits on wind and deck movement and stuff like that, such that if you're really going transocean, there's really no way to park that aircraft just parked on the deck. So I think we really have to start, it's really, really important. You need to say, what's this yacht going to be used for? What is the routine? Because, these are really big, important decisions about the usability and the livability, if that makes sense. It's a bit of an, of with the heli on the yacht. So Dan make really, and it is becoming increasingly important because, Airbus have taken a real interest because they had some incidents offshore with winds coming up over the deck and damaging an H175. And since then, they've taken a lot of interest in it. So, yeah, really good point. Yeah.
Mark, do you want to say anything about hangars?
So let me just say something in general first. I think operating a helicopter off a yacht is probably the most difficult thing we do. Just from a crewing standpoint, from maintaining it, working in all the different regulatory environments all over the world. I don't think most people understand that it's a very special skill set. Now, nobody asked me about a hangar. My policy has always been, I get that helicopter off the boat every chance I get. So in other words, I only have it on the boat if the boss is going to be on board. Otherwise, it's at an airport, it's in a hangar. And then as far as the crossing, we've done both. We've shipped, and then I've also done it on the back of the boat. It's a little bit easier on the bigger boats. We typically will have blade boxes so we can pull the blades, and they're stowed. And then to your point, Simon, we will shrink wrap and tie them down, and obviously look for good weather windows for doing the crossings. I've found from a custom standpoint, it's much easier to have it on the back of the boat than to try to ship it separately, and timing, obviously, right? So I don't think there's an easy answer there. You just have to do what makes sense for your operation.
Totally.
Ideally, you'd have, let's say your helicopter was an H160. Ideally, you'd have one here and one in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be sending it back and forth.
But there's always another point that Mark and Dan, I'm sure you agree, that as soon as you build a hangar, you then find the rest of the crew trying to find things to store in your hangar so that you can't fit your helicopter in it anymore. All of a sudden, you find it full of jet skis and
our blade box container is a perfect example. Oh wow, we could put shit in here. They open it up and start putting the toys and stuff.
There is always looking. Yeah, they're always looking for space, and as long as you are not on the boat, they use this spare space. I would say that we left for helicopters, but it's okay. That's another issue. But I join you, Mark, as well. There is no proper guidance how to operate helicopters on yacht. It's really depending of the user and I would say use of the owner. Definitely, if you do crossings, for example, we are doing crossings. We have a blade crane on heli deck to remove the blades. We can do crossing. We are supported by Airbus to lash the helicopter in accordance with the manufacturer, with the OEM, and with this in mind, for sure, we do our best to satisfy the client, but hangar is highly recommended. And the shipyard and some manufacturers are really taking that seriously and starting to develop very interesting solutions for yachts, for hangars, even integrated on below decks or deployable hangar. But it's for sure. For us helicopter operators, it's always a plus to have a hangar, but most of the time it's always too late or maybe too expensive sometimes, and they don't really consider this point, which is at the end of the day a huge issue for us because we are facing corrosion, downtime of the helicopter, high price for the parts, all these kind of things which are totally impacting the operation of the owner, and we are ending up with serviceabilities even if we are covered by PBH for engine or whatsoever. But as we know, corrosion is not covering those are not covered by those contracts, unfortunately. This is I would say let's say it's a spiral. At the end of the day, you end up in a spiral.
Simon, I'm going to come back to your point about it being hardest, but what are the other big challenges for integrating a yacht, a helicopter onto a yacht?
Well, I think can I just come back to Dan's point again, support Dan's point really, the salt is the biggest enemy, because a lot of owners will say, oh, well, I don't really need engineering support or whatever it is, but seriously consider about it, because what you don't do about containing the salt problem on the yacht, you will pay for in base maintenance. You will absolutely see doubling your bills in base maintenance. Unfortunately, the helicopter is still full of sort of magnesium type alloys, and you can almost hear the damn thing sizzling away. But really, that's a really important point, that seriously take that on board. But I think a lot of it is just, look, the helicopter is a fantastic tool, but it's a very adaptable tool and it's a very flexible tool, but it matches the owner's lifestyle, the owner's requirements. And it's really important to get into the understanding, what do you actually want to do with this aircraft? Because it massively impacts, the satisfaction of the helicopter is to really engage with your helicopter people to say, what am I actually trying to achieve with this aircraft? Because then we can match how to support the aircraft by what you want to achieve, and we can have those realistic conversations to say, well, if you don't do this, you're going to have that, or whatever it is. But it really is, some of the big decisions are, so for example, should I be multi-pilot? Now, I have to say that if you're doing night landings, I would say multi-pilot. Yeah, please, don't, because I can assure you that of all the aviation I've done, and it's not to say that it can't be managed safely, but the most hazardous things you can do is go onto the back of a boat at night. That it can go from stable flight to loss of control within 3 seconds. It can be that quick. And so, you have to seriously think about, am I just doing day ops or am I doing night ops? All those sort of things, because it makes a massive difference. And generally, we have very, very prescriptive and relatively high standards for the crew that we ask to fly to yachts. We do set fairly high standards, because over the years we've learnt that what the sort of basic experience you need, the training you need to be able to do it. But it's that basic question: what are you going to ask this crew to do? Because from those questions of what are you going to ask this crew to do, it sets the whole agenda. Does that make sense? Because the helicopter can be a fantastic tool, but it must be set up to match that owner, and it's not an off-the-shelf thing. It's a very bespoke, a very tailored setup, if that makes sense. I think every owner needs something subtly different. There may be commonalities, but every owner needs something subtly different around the boat support, the engineering support, the crew support, etc. But it is fantastic when it works, and the owners, if we set things up well, then the owners are invariably absolute converts and delighted with it. If it's not set up well, they're just going, oh, these helicopters are just constant maintenance bills. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Dan, do you want to go?
Yeah, totally agree. I used to manage different kind of operation on yachts, such as very high-end owner and yachts with super yachts, and also exploration vessels, which was completely different setup, different type of helicopters. And yes, we all the time need to adapt our operation to the needs of the owner. This is the key of operating helicopters on yacht, 100%. The operation will be different. The type of pilot will be different. The way to operate, single pilot, multi-pilot, the number of engineers on board, the kind of support that you need on the vessel. It's not a one-off. Definitely, there is no one solution for operating helicopters on yacht. 100% not, because I've seen viable case where from one operation to the other, it's a complete opposite, and also depending of the safety of the owner, what they want to get in terms of safety, service. It's really, we need to adapt depending of the owner, 100%.
Yeah.
Mark, anything you want to add?
So I think another huge problem is just insuring a helicopter on the back of a boat. And we've found the best way is, you have to have an operations manual in writing. We don't do night ops. Now, I don't know that they execute everything we have in writing in terms of, having a tender in the water, having a diver, having, somebody, marshaling the helicopter, somebody with the fire extinguisher. But the insurance wants to see a very organized program. And obviously your pilots, the recurrent training for your pilots, it all goes into the mix. So
I'm not sure you
that's
should be
another
saying.
issue. I think we probably spend $2,000 per takeoff and landing just for insurance.
What?
Oh yeah. Go ask your operators or look at their insurance policies. I'll bet you it's a lot more than you think.
If I can come in on that remark, obviously we're in a slightly different. We tend to find ourselves to be able to. We work very closely with insurers, but Mark raises a very good point. So what we tend to do is we end up getting into a collaborative insurance arrangement with the yacht insurers, and so generally we arrange for the owners, because normally the ultimate beneficial owner is the same, the aircraft or the yacht. So we normally get into a situation, and the insurers, there are many, good, certainly in the London market, there are many experienced insurance now, brokers, Gallagher's to name but one, but there are others as well, Willis as well, who are very experienced at this. And one of the things we often get into is that we arrange for a waiver of subrogation between the yacht and the helicopter, such that the insurers agree that says whatever the helicopter has, the helicopter insurer pays, whatever the yacht has, the yacht insurer pays. And that works quite well, and we quite commonly end up arranging those arrangements, and that can certainly help the situation.
If I may, I will. This is where I wanted to come. Thank you, Simon. I am also working very conjointly with, I would say, aviation and yacht insurers, and we are doing exactly the same kind of waiver. And to add a couple of points on this, and for sure, if either the aviation or the yacht insurers will get the bill, and one or the other cannot, because it's the same UBO, you cannot claim to the other one, which is, for example, the helicopter cannot claim on the yacht, and at the opposite, which is, I would say, a good point to reduce the premium of the insurance for the helicopter and the yacht as well.
Okay. Final question.
This is the EU market. In the US, maybe that's kind of different.
Yeah. No, they're similar.
Okay, great.
Okay, final question. What if you could change one thing about one headache that you guys have involving yachts, helicopters on yachts? What would you choose? Final question. And Dan, you go first.
Okay, if I can choose something today, I would just take for some owners, be careful, be very, very, very careful on social medias. What you see on social medias, this is not the reality. Most of the time, you can see some helicopters landing on very confined yacht area. This is not legal. This is not legal. You should respect some regulation, either the ICAO Annex 14 or whatsoever. And this is why today we have, I would say, some, not even operators, but some people who are not reflecting the reality and can have a really serious on safety of the operation on yachts. And this is, if I can change something, it's for some, helicopters on yachts. It's a serious subject. There is a high matter of safety. There is there is special skills required by pilots and engineers. And this is why sometimes social media are impacting our operation, and we can have sometimes owners coming back to us. Okay, why they are landing, they are doing this, and I cannot. Sorry, because we are following some guidance, and in accordance with the regulation, we cannot do this. And this is why sometimes it's a little bit frustrating for the owners. But this is why today, if I can change this, social medias.
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. Mark, what would you say?
Well, I just think I would like a better awareness on the owner and the yacht captain that they need to support the helicopter operation and treat it differently than they do the rest of the parts of the boat. You know, to understand how dangerous it can be, to understand any notice in a different country is great, you know, for figuring the rules and regulations out. You know, planning for acquisitions, for maintenance, you know, all of the above. I'd love to see that flow better than it does for all operations, not just.
We've got a comment from the audience saying they think it must be hard to get an owner to actually recognise what they want to do with the boat and the aircraft. They think that could be a challenge.
Right.
Simon, what's your final?
Well, I think that speaks to that point. I think my advice, my point would be, in all the operations we've done, there's always a solution. But the point is that says, the moment the owner thinks helicopter, please engage the right helicopter specialist. From the moment you think about it, talk to the right people. That was the thing I would change. You know, if I can suggest nothing else, that would be it. You know. Yeah.
And I guess my final question for you, Simon, although you're saying it's more complex than offshore, more complex than police, it's still better to be sitting on the yacht sipping a glass of lemonade than it is stuck on a rig for 4 days because of a storm.
Well, yes, absolutely. But I would say that generally on the super yacht, the crew, the pilots are not really wanted to be seen. So if you're in that situation, you're probably in the bows of the vessel somewhere, because you know you're not really supposed to be on deck if you're not flying. But that's just how you live with being on a super yacht. That's fine. Yeah.
And on that glamour, I'm going to hand back to Will. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Al. Really appreciate you joining us today. Good to see you, and hope to see you real soon.
See you. Bye.
And also, as per Simon's, thanks to the right people for what Simon said. Thanks to the right people for joining us. Dan and Mark, your insight is really fascinating on the evolution of the VIP yachting market and how operations occur. It's great to have you today. This sector continues to showcase how precision operations and luxury expectations come together in remarkable ways. Before we close, I would like to extend another sincere thank you to all our moderators and panelists, and really all of you at home joining us today. It's really means a lot to have you come to our roundtable to learn about what's happening in the helicopter industry. So thank you again for being with us here today. A reminder also that Aero Asset continues to publish our quarterly heli market trends report. It's an in-depth look at the pre-owned twin engine helicopter market. The latest edition right now is available at aeroasset.com/report. Also, if you'll be attending European Rotors next week in Cologne, Germany, please stop by our booth, number 1321, to say hello, have a cup of coffee, talk helicopters. This concludes our HMT Live Roundtable, focusing on global VIP and yachting and fixed wing operations. We look forward to welcoming you the next time for our Heli Market Trends Live Roundtable in December. I believe it's December 11th, where we'll be focusing on the lease and financing segment of the rotor world. So stay tuned for further information. Until then, thank you for joining us, and see you next time.